One of my subscribers sent me this story on my Instagram, and this is a long-awaited update of a topic that I've talked about a couple months ago. I want to say back in June, where you had this young woman whose name was Regis Korchinski-Paquet or Paquet, who was out of Canada, who they say fell from her balcony in her apartment, the one in Canada, and died. And then they claim they don't know how she did it, or they said that they tried to claim that it was a suicide and everything like that. But there were some terrorists in her home when this happened, and they were the only ones to witness her last the last time seeing her all the way down to her demise. Well, in a not so shocking revelation, it says that there are no reasonable grounds to charge any of them for her death, even though they were the ones in her apartment when she went over the balcony. So they just took their word for it. So they just watched her fall to her death, and that's the word they're taking for it. That's the only thing that. Okay, let me get into it. Regis Korchinski-Paquet fell to her death while trying to sidestep onto a neighbor's balcony, said a report released Wednesday by Ontario's police watchdog, which concludes there are no grounds to charge officers who were in her home at the time. I don't believe this crap. The lengthy report from the Special Investigations Unit notes that Korchinski-Paquet's death sparked important conversations about the ways in which police interact with Black and Indigenous people, but says there was no evidence of police wrongdoing or overt racism in the incident itself. Director Joseph Martino said race may have been a factor in the events leading up to the death of the 29-year-old who was both Indigenous and Black, but that examining systemic issues in policing is not his role. The task before me was a narrow one, namely to determine whether there was reasonable grounds on the evidence collected by the SIU to believe that anyone or more of the officers who responded to Ms. Korchinski-Paquet's apartment committed a criminal offense in connection with her death. The Special Investigations Unit said 6 officers were in the 29-year-old woman's Toronto home when she fell from the balcony in May. Okay, it was back in May. While her mother and brother were nearby. The agency's report says Korchinski-Paquet's mother called police to the home because the two siblings were fighting. Bottles and punches had been thrown, and she wanted both of them removed from the apartment. It says Korchinski-Paquet and her brother also called 911 during the argument, which began as a dispute over the volume of the TV. When the 911 operator asked about any mental health issues, the report says the family indicated that Korchinski-Paquet had epilepsy and had seizures earlier in the day. It says that after police arrived, 2 officers blocked Korchinski-Paquet from getting to her mother and brother before allowing her back into the apartment so she could use the bathroom. She then went out onto the 24th floor balcony and prevented officers from joining her by holding her body against the door. Very quickly, Ms. Korchinski-Paquet scaled the balcony railing and the subject officer lost sight of her. That's what they say. With this story right here, I wish they would have had some kind of body cam footage so we could have actually seen that actually occur leading up to that point. Because just taking their word for it is a bit shaky for me. And then when you saw the video of what the brother said, the one I guess that was in an altercation with her, because if you remember, I did a video back in May when this happened where you heard the audio of the brother talking, and then he had talked to the mother as well. And the way that they sounded on that camera sounds completely different than how these cops are describing this. They're not saying this in a regular tone. And when you hear the brother talk, it's almost like, it comes from a place of they killed my sister. Or was that, I don't know if that was the brother, if that was the cousin. It was a relative, but I think it was a cousin or something like that. It was a standpoint, they killed my relative. And not, she jumped to her death. Those of you who've been subscribed to me, around that time, y'all heard the audio for yourself. Like what these cops are coming up with doesn't make a lick of sense to me at all. It says she then tried to scale the balcony and cross onto the adjoining one, which is when she lost her balance and fell to her death. The agency said no officers were on the balcony with Korchinski-Paquet at the time, and there's no evidence the officers committed a crime. Martino said that the officers seemed to be confused about whether epilepsy was a mental health condition and if they should or could detain Korchinski-Paquet under the Mental Health act. So are you trying to tell me you never heard the term epilepsy before? The limited layperson's research I have conducted of the matter suggests that epilepsy is a neurological disorder with manifestations that can be mental as well as physical. Be that as it may, I cannot fault the officers for failing to take Ms. Korchinski-Paquet into custody prior to her scaling the balcony railing. She had not given him any indication that she wished to harm herself and was professing to be the victim of an assault at the hands of her brother. He also said the officers tried to de-escalate the situation between Korchinski-Paquet's family. The decision comes after the arm's length agency interviewed all 6 officers along with 15 civilian witnesses. The agency said investigators also received a written statement for Korchinski-Paquet's father, with whom she had been speaking on the phone moments before her death. And I'm going to stop it right there. I'm telling you, it has to be way more to this. Because I don't believe that this woman just straight up killed herself, because now you're just taking the words of them because they were the only ones there. Because at the time when those police were in the apartment with her, her mother and her brother were not in the apartment anymore. It was just her and those cops. So who knows what really happened when those doors closed and her brother, her mother were on the other side of the door. Because I don't even think they were even in the hallway. I think they probably were out of the building. So who knows what really actually went on. And then she was so high up. She was very high up. So you can't see you can't see clearly into the apartment from way down on the ground. So it's way more to this. Unfortunately, it's probably not going to come out because they decided not to charge them with anything. And notice, like I said, this happened back in May. So it's like they had enough time to come up with a story on how to cover all of this up. But I do again offer my condolences to her family and her friends and her loved ones, because like I said, this is a very shady thing. But this shows you right here that even in Canada, they go through the same thing as they do here in the States.